Phil, it is great to have you here on Keep Productive. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Glad to finally meet you.
Yeah, it's good. It's going to be really good fun. So obviously, one of the things I want to start with is Evernote, and I think that's how I obviously first discovered you. And the sort of Evernote conferences were very inspirational. And I wanted to hear sort of more about how it was like being the CEO of Evernote, and I guess how it sort of, changed you in a way to where you are today.
Well, it was great. I mean, Evernote was a really felt like a really important experience. It was my third company, and we were kind of the same co-founders for the first two, and we had just exited our second company, which was a company that did security systems for governments and banks, and just kind of trying to figure out what to do next. And we decided we wanted to work on something where we didn't really care what customers wanted. We were kind of tired of thinking about customers. We wanted to build something for ourselves, and we were really into life hacking, brain expansion, just kind of all of the stuff about being more productive in life. And we kind of realized, this would be back in 2007, that productivity as software really hadn't changed in like 20, 30 years. It was still Microsoft Office. So we decided to start working on this thing that we called the cognitive prosthesis. We were in Boston, and then I was introduced to Stepan Pachikov, who had a company in California with kind of very similar ideas. I flew out to meet him, and we decided that let's just merge the two companies together. So we merged two small startups together in 2007. We kind of recreated this new thing called Evernote, and it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, the rest is history. And
I mean, it was the central thing that was different for me as my third company was we were finally building things for us. We were the target customers, and so that just went much faster because it didn't take us very long to iterate on the product, because we could make a small change, and 20 minutes later we could just, as long as we were being honest with ourselves, we could decide this is better or worse. And so everything went faster. You can iterate much faster when you're building stuff for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you get so many ideas, excitement, and obviously during that time there was so many different products, and it is a very different landscape. I think it really set the tale for what productivity is like now, really, because we are going into that sort of world of where apps are doing different things, and there's sort of like a hype community around it, which I think Evernote started. What are the products that you are sort of most proud of that you launched whilst you were at Evernote?
Well, I mean, Evernote itself, I think was a really good product. There was a version. The history of this kind of gets muddled, since it's been there was a thing called Evernote that was around since I think 2000 or something. If you look at the Wayback Machine as to when the domain was first used or something. And it kind of went through a few different iterations of what it was, and it was what kind of the software was. And then when we kind of restarted everything in 2007, there was a version for Windows that was called Evernote with a capital N. That's kind of that was the difference in the kind of the epochs of the company. At one point it had a capital N, capital E, capital N, and then after that it was all spelled properly. And so there was a version for Windows, which was very much a kind of a power user, productivity software that Stepan and his team had built out, and it had this. It just had tons and tons of features. It had this amazing OCR capability where you can search for words and text, and then it had about, I don't know, some tens of thousands of users. I think it was like 30,000 users or something when we kind of rebooted it. And we decided to kind of take those core ideas, but really try to make it much more mainstream. Try to make it reach millions of people and not thousands. And so it was mostly about getting rid of features. It was about kind of stripping things away, which is kind of funny to say, because you look at Evernote now and it's got so much stuff in it. It's kind of it's funny to think that even that's the result of a significant paring down of stuff, stripping down features, making it sync everywhere. I think we were the first really mainstream app that just had syncing without having to think about it. There was no, you didn't have to think about like saving things or what folders you were in or setting up FTP servers. You could just like put something in on your Mac and it would appear on your phone, instantly. Like that was kind of magic. And that was I remember the first time I did that, like in the field. The first I was in, I think it was had to get my car registration changed or something. I don't remember. I had to get a new driver's license. And I was at the office of the Department of Motor Vehicles office and stood in line for like 2 hours. And then when it was my turn, they asked me, they had to see my car registration. And I didn't have it. I forgot it with me, but I remembered that like, oh yeah, I had it. I scanned it into my computer, into Evernote like a few weeks ago. And I should have it on my phone now because that's how Evernote works. And I remember like taking out my phone and starting Evernote and like searching for it and finding it there. And like, of course I wasn't surprised because it was my product. We had built it. I knew that's what it would do, but it was my first time I had the visceral experience of using it for real. Excuse me. And it was so good. And I was just like, yeah, this is going to change. Like from now on, like no one's going to think about where they left that file. And there was lots of other like small things like that we did that I'm, I was pretty proud to have been a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when you said it, one of the conferences, like I think it was like one of the first times you saw Evernote out in public in like a coffee shop, and it was a very surreal experience. I bet it's strange when you see that when somebody's using it.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw it being used. It was a coffee shop in New York, and it was some lawyer I was standing in back of in the Starbucks line. Yeah, and he was yelling at someone on the phone. He had like a big Bluetooth headphone, and he was screaming at someone. This guy was a total ass. He was just screaming at someone, like jabbing his finger on his phone into Evernote. And I was horrified. I was like, oh my God.
I don't know him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. And obviously you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but what made you sort of transition away from Evernote?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, basically it got really hard. And I didn't think I was very good as the CEO at that scale of company. It was about 450 people or so by the time I left.
Yeah.
I talked right from the beginning. I mean, you probably remember this, but right from the beginning of Evernote, like I talked about making it a 100-year startup. That was like one of these talking points that we had. We said 100-year startup, 100-year startup. And part of that was, realizing that it was my job to find my replacement. Like obviously, like I couldn't be the last CEO of Evernote because then we would have failed on our mission to be a 100-year startup because I had no intention of being a CEO for 100 years. And so I always like knew that I would replace myself, and I talked about it, but it was never real. I never took the next step, which is to think, well, when I say that, do I mean in 20 years or do I mean in 5 years or do I mean in 2 months? Like, what do I mean exactly?
Yeah.
And then by I think 2014, 2015, it had just gotten to a point where I just wasn't having fun anymore. Someone asked me, are you still having fun? And I said, like, no, I'm not. And they said, I remember who this was. This was actually Nick Goodman from the founder of GoPro. Yeah, that's
right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. He said, hey, you still having fun? I'm like, no. And he gave me really good advice. He said, hey, you shouldn't do anything that you're not having fun at, because the kind of personality you are, if you're not having fun at something, it probably means you're just not very good at it. And the company now deserves someone who's really good at it. So you should rearrange your jobs so that you're only doing things that you really like and find someone else to do it.
Yeah.
And that seemed right. It was just, it had been a really tough 9 years at that point, 8 years at that point. I guess I was there for 9 years total. I started a process of replacing myself. The original plan that I discussed with the board was we'd find a president. I would stay on as CEO for a couple of years. We'd hire a president, and the president would take over as CEO. And like executive chairman or something. We searched for like a year. It turned out it was much easier to find a CEO than a president. It's just easier to find impressive people that want to be the top person than the second person.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew that, like, when the new CEO came on, like whether or not I stayed connected to the company was hard to know up front, right? It would really depend on the chemistry. My plan was not to leave. My plan was to stay as a kind of head of product, executive chairman. I tried to model it after what Reid Hoffman did at LinkedIn, where Jeff Weiner became the CEO and Reid kind of stayed involved. But I kind of figured that was, a 50-50 chance whether it would work. And it just didn't. When when Chris O'Neill came in as CEO, it just made both of us uncomfortable having me hanging around. So after a few months, I kind of made it was a difficult decision. I mean, difficult emotional decision, but easy intellectual decision that, I should just, I shouldn't just hover around. I wasn't going to help anyone. So I left, and it was a long time ago. That was already in.
It's a while ago, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, it's been like 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you got to go when you feel like it's best. And I actually didn't know the story, so I was curious myself. But you're on to pretty bright things now. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about and more of that story as well?
Sure. Well, when I left Evernote, I thought I would. That was my third, company. I'd been running startups for 25 years or something at that point, and I was tired. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's enough of that. I don't want to run any more companies. So I thought I would kind of quasi-retire. I became a VC, became an investor at General Catalyst. Yeah. And it turned out that I just wasn't very good at that job. I just don't care, I think, enough to be a professional investor. I didn't have the skills for it. It was kind of fun, but it was also kind of frustrating. It was frustrating, hearing ideas and not being able to think, oh, what would I do with these ideas? Having to decide, what are the founders going to do, and kind of picking winners and losers. And it was just a very different skill set than operating. Yeah. So I was there for 2 years, which was a great experience. It was amazing seeing companies from the other side, as a board member, as an investor. So I co-founded a company called AllTurtles, which is a product studio. And the idea there is just to make high quality products with as little nonsense as possible. And then one of the products that came out of that right after the pandemic started was Mmhmm, which is our product to give you communication superpowers on video. So I'm currently running Mmhmm and AllTurtles.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it must be difficult to do that, be self-aware that you're sort of not good at something to some extent. How did you how was that difficult to find out that you weren't necessarily good at that, if you know what I mean? Or was it did you think it might have been imposter syndrome or something when you started?
Well, the thing is, I think everyone has imposter syndrome. Well, every competent person, right? I mean, what's that called? It's the Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, that's what it is. The Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That people can Google. Basically, it's a pretty well studied phenomenon that says that people who are competent tend to overestimate how competent other people are in their field, and so they actually tend to underestimate how good they are. Whereas people who are incompetent, it turns out that if you're incompetent, among the many things that you're probably incompetent at is actually self-assessment. So incompetent people tend to think that they're actually really good. Yeah. So basically, that the flip side of that is almost all high quality people feel like imposters, at least from time to time, because you're kind of constantly underestimating how good you are at something and overestimating how good everyone else is. So actually, it's kind of a red flag. If someone thinks they're really, really good at something, it's worth paying attention, because they're probably not. They probably are bad at many things, including determining how good they are. So I'd kind of gotten used to, I think, imposter syndrome, I think most people who are reasonably good, have. And I kind of knew, how I could tell, whether or not I was actually being effective. And so when I was a VC, that was actually a first time for me. It had been a very long time since I found myself in a job where I was just I'm just objectively not very good at this job. It was weird. It was a weird feeling. I hadn't felt that before. And it was kind of fun. Actually, it was kind of liberating. It was kind of I don't have to be good at everything. And I'm lucky enough where my life I've been fortunate enough that my life is laid out in a way where, I was bad at a job that wasn't that big of a deal. I just leave, find a better job. It was kind of an interesting and almost freeing experience. But it made me think about well, why not? And what went right and what went wrong. And it meshed with me leaving Evernote too, because there I felt I was pretty good. I mean, I always felt like an imposter, but objectively, I thought that I was pretty good at kind of the early stages as the CEO. And I felt that it just wasn't very good at sort of the middle stages. We were at a few hundred people and above, and it made me think about like, okay, well, what didn't I enjoy at that stage, and can I do it differently now? So I think I really learned a tremendous amount from that experience, and I think I'm a better CEO because of it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I've always seen you, at least from my perspective, as like the community CEO, just because you're so good at like bringing people together around a common cause. But in like a very like it's like a mesh between like a community manager and CEO, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I think I was I think I was good at getting at that point. I was good at getting like a small number of very, 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 very talented people, and just walking through walls, walking through glass with them.
Yeah.
But it was less good when it was many hundreds of people, and I had to think about career development and kind of all of the other stuff. And I think I've gotten better at some of that, but others are still. At some point, I think I just turned 50 a couple of months ago, and I think at some point you just have to say, look, I can improve in the things that I'm not good at, but I'm only going to improve so much. And if you really want to operate at the top of your game, like it's almost pointless improving the things that you're not going to be able to improve to a world-class level.
Yeah.
If you imagine like different attributes, and then go from like 1 to 10, whereas like 10 is like the best in the world.
Yeah.
To really operate very successfully as a company, like almost everything should be a 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And if your natural ability is like a 5, if you work really hard to improve at it, how high can you get from a 5? Can you get to a 6, a 7, maybe an 8? Probably not. So things that I'm like naturally not, at least, attributes that I feel I haven't started at a pretty high level, is just kind of becomes pointless to try to improve. So I'd much rather double down to improve, take the things that I'm a natural 7 at and work really hard and become a 9. That's much better than, struggling with something that I'm a 4 at and working really hard to get to a 6. And then that's still not good enough for world-class operation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Focus on the strengths versus the weaknesses. And obviously you've been fairly busy recently with the web and the Teams launch for Do you want to take us through a little bit of the updates on there?
Yeah. I mean, we had this 4-year plan when we started Mmhmm. The main idea of the product is this is communication superpowers, right? We really think that you can communicate much better using than the way that people have been used to communicating, using video in smart ways, and having distributed teams. And almost every company now has teams that are either partially or fully distributed. It's like more important than ever to rethink how teams communicate. So we had this 4-year plan where we said we're going to do kind of one word a year for the first 4 years of the company. This is like the only like business slide that I even had that we raised money on. We kind of said that in the first year we're just focused on getting started. In the second year we're focused on here it is. This is my only fundraising slide. The 4-year plan, one word per year. First year was to get started, which means make something rather than nothing. Put a product in the world, hire a team, raise some money. We did pretty well on that. Second year is product market fit. It's really find the product that we want to make, like discover what it's going to be. And we're just at the end of year 2. Our anniversary is May 27th, so we're a couple of weeks away.
Okay.
So we're kind of finishing up year 2. And so we spent the entire past year just really experimenting with different features, different takes in the product. I think we have a version that's very, very, very powerful. And the latest releases that we had, the web version, the Teams version, we've got a couple of other things coming out in the next few weeks, are really meant to start to take us into year 3, which is about scale, which is about reach.
Okay.
And so the way to do that is just to make the product simple, make it as easy as possible and accessible as possible. The older versions of Mmhmm were, I think, kind of power user versions. They were meant for people like me. But now there's no software to install. It's much simpler. It's really meant to be the much more consumer-friendly and a mainstream version that gives you communication superpowers. And so we're going to spend a year focused on making it as simple as possible so that it can spread with as little friction as possible. And then distant sci-fi future of year 4, we'll focus on profit, on making sure that it's a self-sustaining business.
Lovely. Yeah, it's I think it's a really interesting market because obviously remote and hybrid's here to stay. So it's like, how do you build that to be like, because I guess you're sort of going to be targeting Loom with some of these updates in that sort of sector, right?
I mean, we're not really targeting anyone. We think the main kind of idea of distributed teams, the main way to work on them is we have this communication hierarchy, this communication pyramid, or basically you think about the different types of interactions, where like all the way at the top up here, this would be in person, like actually when we're actually in the same physical location with people. And this is the most scarce, right? Like it's very expensive and it's hard to like scale and duplicate in-person interactions. Like, so we think that whenever you're actually in person with someone, it's very precious. Like you have to really make it count, right? You never want to be like, you never want to spend 2 hours in the same room with people and have it feel like a waste of time. It's kind of a tragedy. You never get that time back. So like when you're in person, there should be a good food involved. It should be about relationship building. Like it should be special. Every in-person interaction should be special. Then you've got kind of the middle layer, which is what you and I are doing right now. This is live video, so we're actually talking synchronously. This isn't quite as scarce as as being up there because we don't have to travel, but it's still not that scalable because we have to be here at the same time, and the more people you have, the harder it is to get everyone at the same time, and everyone has to be paying attention, and time zones and all that stuff. So the only thing you should be doing in this live video layer, like this is where Zoom and everyone else got started, like the things that you should be doing here is having a discussion. And it's got to be live. It's got to be interactive. It's like, and the way that we tell whether something's a discussion is we say it's the face hole test. It's kind of like this. If you see a bunch of people talking and one person is like moving their mouth a lot and everyone else is listening, then like that's not a conversation. That's a lecture. That shouldn't be done live. All of those things, which is like about 80% of things on business, ought to be down here, which is recorded video. So any kind of like informational update, all of that stuff is recorded. So the main idea is we spend about 80% of our time in this recorded layer, about 15% of our time live video, and about 5% of the time in person. And I think the product that's going to have the biggest impact is one that kind of lets you decide what to do in which layer, and then effortlessly kind of slide back and forth between them. So you smoothly transition. That's what we're trying to do. It's a very different way, I think, of thinking about communication. But there's going to be lots of companies that are also trying to invent this field because it's so foundationally important.
But there's not really a company that's doing that sort of 3 prongs of it in a way.
I don't think so. But which is just like with Evernote. Well, I mean, I guess I've never cared too much about what other companies are doing. Even back at Evernote, like we weren't the first note-taking app.
Of course,
And we weren't the first, we weren't the last. Like, the way that a product has impact is it becomes, for some period of time, it becomes the best, and it moves the whole industry forward, and it moves, civilization forward. And that's what we're going to do. And there's going to be lots of companies, just like there was with note-taking. There's going to be lots of companies. We'll partner with many of them. We'll fight it out with others. Which is which? Like, who knows? It's so early. Who can tell?
That's it. Yeah, it's really exciting, and we're set to do a review on it soon anyway. So that'll be good fun for the audience. I never thought I'd see Phil Libin as inside of a pyramid in this video, though, or in my life in general. Brilliant. Well,
I think it's very like. Your audience here is going to be, most people are going to be watching this recorded, right? Like, no one's watching us live right now.
No.
So even that's already like a part of this pyramid, right? Like the recorded content, because you'll have time to edit it a little bit. You'll have time to break it up. People can watch it at different speeds. They could watch it when it's convenient. Like, that's just a better experience for conveying information. Whereas you and I are doing it live. So even the concept of like live versus recorded is a malleable concept, because you got to ask like live for who, recorded for who. There's a bunch of subtle ideas in there that when you add them up, they really change the world.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's really exciting. I bet it's keeping you all busy over there, right?
Well, yeah, the world is busy. Yeah, in general.
Yeah,
Right now.
definitely.
Oh, by the way, congratulations on Bento. I just
Oh,
checked it
thank
out.
you.
I saw that you put that out, so I checked it out yesterday, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Oh,
It's really cool. Yeah, it's definitely an area that's very near and dear to my heart. I love bento boxes.
yeah, I knew you did
In fact,
already from back in the day.
yeah, and like it's cool. I think there's like the philosophy of doing less is very important.
Yeah.
And the philosophy of like stripping features out is very important. It's very hard to do. There's that balance too between like how do you make it as simple as possible without making it not useful. You'll have to find that balance. But yeah, but it's cool. I like the aesthetic.
Oh, that's amazing.
Funny thing is if you look at if you pay close attention to the new website,
Yeah.
App, there's the video on the homepage. There's a few like videos embedded.
Yeah.
What the team is actually doing in that video that's showing off the product on Loop is they're designing bento boxes.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're designing. So if you kind of look at the video carefully and you actually see like what are they showing? What are the slides? It's a design for a bento restaurant. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'll have a look at that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm obsessed with like sort of Japanese aesthetic and culture. So I think it's I'm honestly a bit sort of taken back by the fact that you've even seen it. So that's
cool.
amazing.
It reminds me, there's this app that actually I'm about to finish using in the next few days. Because I don't know what happens when you get to the end of it. There's an app called Fantasy Hike on the iPhone App Store. I think probably just one person making it. And it's like, it's super, 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 super simple. So basically it's like a little infinite scrolling, side scrolling little cartoon thing of, it basically follows the Lord of the Rings walk progression. So it follows the walk that Frodo takes. It's not officially licensed, so it all has slightly different names, to be legally distinct from Lord of the Rings. But it's basically a fitness app. So as you walk, it walks you, and it just tells you like you don't do anything, you just walk. And cool. All it's doing is showing you like, okay, you've like left the Shire and you got attacked by the Black Riders, and it's just this beautiful thing. It does one thing. It's basically a step counter, but it's got a really nice aesthetic. It's very simple.
Yeah.
So you walk from the Shire to Mordor. Which I'm about to finish because I've been doing it for a few months now.
Oh wow.
And it's like it's cool. I like this genre of like purposefully simple.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to make something complex than to make something simple. And I really like this genre of like purposely simple.
Yeah, we're hopefully gonna make a few more apps, but it's sort of like flipping productivity on its head a bit with like sort of mindful approaches. So yeah, I mean, I have to give you credit because obviously like I wouldn't have got any inspiration about how to even do any of this without people like yourself.
I was going to make a to-do app.
Really?
Which you're welcome. You can have this idea if you want.
Can I?
Like most of my ideas, it's mostly a joke. But sometimes the jokes become real. Started completely as a joke. I was going to call this app To Did.
To Did.
And the idea is it's a to-do list, but it's read only. You can't you can't ever enter anything into it. Okay. It basically, you look at it, and every time you look at it, it's like it's figured out what you did based on like scraping your calendar and your location history and your Amazon. It basically just like it connects to as many areas of your life as possible, and it makes completed tasks and checks them off for you immediately. So it's like you look at the app and it's like, here's what you did today. You're like, sat on the couch for 3 hours, check. Watched Netflix, checked. Ordered toilet paper on Amazon, check. So everything you ever see on it is stuff that you already did.
Yeah.
Walk the dog, like check.
Yeah.
There's no input, but you look at it and you feel like, oh yeah, look at all the stuff I already accomplished.
Yeah.
Today. It's the stuff I already did.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because nobody ever really looks at an activity log or anything like that. That's quite a good idea.
So I think it was meant to be more of a mental health app than a to-do app, but
Yeah, I like it. Yeah,
are related.
That'll be our next one.
I'll endorse it if you make something like that. That would be fun.
We'll sort it out. Thank you so much, Phil, for coming on. Honestly, I really appreciate it. We'll put all the links to your stuff in the description below, Twitter and all that jazz. So obviously, a huge thanks, seriously.
No, thank you, and thank you for all the many years of hard work and helping Evernote, and I really appreciate it.